Bora, The Adventures of a Goose with No Feather. Once upon a time, there were two geese called Mr. and Mrs. Plumpster. They lived on a deserted piece of marshland near the east coast of England, where their ancestors had once lived many years before. There they built their nest and laid their eggs. Each spring the Plumpsters came back to the marshes and mended their nest. Then Mrs. Plumpster settled down to lay her eggs, and Mr. Plumpster kept guard. He hissed at anything that came near the nest. Sometimes he hissed even if there was nothing in sight. It made him feel important. Then the eggs began to hatch. One fine spring morning, there were 6 baby Plumpsters in the nest. Mr. Plumpster was delighted, and he invited his friends round to celebrate. The young geese were given names. They were Archie, Frida, Jennifer, Oswald, Timothy, and Bora. Now, all geese look very much alike when they're young, but right from the Bora had a beak, wings, and webbed feet like all her brothers and sisters, but she didn't have any feathers. Mr. and Mrs. Plumpster were very worried about this. They called in the doctor goose, who came along with his little leather bag. The doctor examined Bora carefully and said there was nothing wrong with her, except that she didn't have any feathers. A most unusual case, he went on, and he thought for a long while. Then he told Mrs. Plumpster that there was only one thing to do. She must knit some feathers for Bora. So Mrs. Plumpster got out her knitting needles and set to work. Of course, she couldn't knit real feathers, but she made a kind of grey woolen jersey, as much like feathers as she could. When she had finished, she called Bora and tried it on her. Bora was delighted and flapped around with joy, because she'd always been chilly at night. She went and showed the other young geese, but they just laughed at her. This made her very unhappy, and she went into a patch of tall reeds and cried. Now, by this time, the other young geese were learning to fly and to swim properly. But Bora didn't like joining in because the others teased her, and so she got very behind with her lessons. Nobody noticed that she wasn't attending. Mr. and Mrs. Plumpster were far too busy. Bora did try to learn to swim, but whenever she went into the water, her jersey took such a long time to dry afterwards that she soon gave up. By now the summer was almost over. The weather was getting cooler, and the geese were becoming restless. At this time of year, they always went to a warmer land, where it was easier to find food. Plumpsters began getting ready to leave. They covered their nest with twigs and rushes to keep it safe through the stormy winter. Then, one day, it became really cold and wet. The geese shivered and knew it was time for them to go. They chose one wise old goose to lead them, and they all flew away. But Bora didn't go. She couldn't fly. Instead, she went and hid and watched them leave. Nobody noticed that she was missing. They were all too busy thinking of the journey ahead. As the geese disappeared into the grey sky, tears trickled down Bora's beak. She didn't know what to do. it was drizzling, and she wandered on, hoping to find a dry place for the night. It was already getting dark when she came to a line of boats moored in the estuary. Walker chose one that had no lights on board, and she walked up the gangplank. She was just going down into the hold of the boat when there was a loud bark. A dog came rushing out, which gave Walker a terrible fright. But the dog, seeing it was only a goose, stopped barking and introduced himself. He was called Fowler. Walker explained that she only wanted to stay under cover for the night. So Fowler showed her into a part of the hold where there were some old sacks for her to lie on. She was so tired, she fell asleep almost at once. Now the boat, which was called the Crombie, belonged to Captain McAllister. Late that night, he and his mate, whose name was Fred, came back, and they decided to sail early in the morning before it was light. Fowler forgot all about Walker, who was still asleep in the hold. It wasn't until they were well on their way that he remembered and told the captain.
Well, well, said Captain McAllister, a goose on board. She'll have to work a passage if she's coming with us to London.
Walker was soon very friendly with the captain, Fred, and, of course, with Fowler. She coiled pieces of rope with her beak, picked up crumbs from the floor, and helped in any way she could. In return, she was given plenty of good food. At last, the Crombie steamed into the Thames, and they were nearing London. Captain McAllister began to wonder what to do with Walker when they got there. He decided to leave her in Kew Gardens, which is a large park where lots of geese live all the year round. When they came to the place where the river flows past Kew Gardens, Captain McAllister lifted Walker over the railings and put her with the other geese. She was sorry to say goodbye to her friends, but they promised to come and visit her on their next trip to London. The geese at Kew didn't mind that Walker had no feathers. There were already so many strange kinds of birds in the gardens. Nobody laughed at her grey woolen jersey, and all the geese were very friendly, especially one called Ferdinand. Ferdinand cared for Walker and taught her to swim really well. She's still living there happily, and whenever Captain McAllister, Fred and Fowler come to London, they call in to see her. So, if you're in Kew Gardens at any time, and you see a goose who looks somehow different from the others, it might well be Walker. Cannonball Simp.
The brewery horses were much bigger than Humbert, and they were terrible snobs. They had everything they wanted, including an annual holiday in the country. Their harnesses sparkled with polish, and they were groomed every day. They were always boasting about the fact that they pulled the Lord Mayor's golden coach.
All you do is to pull scrap iron,
they would say. One autumn day, Mr. Birkin left Humbert in the brewery yard while he had his lunch. There was a lot of commotion going on there. 6 of the horses were being groomed and fitted out with the smartest harnesses Humbert had ever seen. Humbert asked him what was going on.
Don't you know?
They said.
We're going to pull the Lord Mayor's coach tomorrow.
Humbert felt terrible. He stayed awake all night, thinking how unfair life was. He brooded about it all next morning as he and Mr. Birkin travelled through the streets.
Those brewery horses have all the luck,
He said to himself. He thought about his own shabby harness in the old cart. All although Mr. Firkin was very kind and brushed him down, kept his stable clean, and gave him plenty of food, Humbert still felt envious, disgruntled, and miserable. Then, suddenly, as they rounded a corner, down at the end of the street, they saw a huge crowd, and Humbert rushed forward and nosed his way in between the people to see what it was they were looking at. The crowd were watching none other than the Lord Mayor's show, and there, before Humbert's eyes, came the horses from the brewery, pulling the enormous golden coach with the Lord Mayor in it. Behind the coach came the pikemen. Humbert watched enviously as the procession moved slowly along. Suddenly, the crowd gave a gasp. One of the rear wheels of the coach had broken. The coach toppled down, and the horses came to a stop. There was a hush. Everyone was aghast. Such a thing had never occurred in all the hundreds of years since the show began. Then lots of things happened all at once. The Lord Mayor was helped down from the broken coach, and some large cars appeared to take him to the mansion house.
Motor cars?
He bellowed.
Unheard of. Monstrous. On an occasion like this, the Lord Mayor does not ride in a motor car. Get me another coach or something.
Humbert saw his chance. He charged forward. The policeman and Mr. Firkin tried to hold him back, but he managed to get through and went straight over to the Lord Mayor.
Ah, my good horse,
said the Lord Mayor.
Perhaps you and your driver would be kind enough to take me to the mansion house.
Everybody cheered, except the officials. They were horrified at the idea of the Lord Mayor riding on a scrap dealer's cart. But if he wanted to do so, who could prevent him? So the Lord Mayor climbed up onto the cart